This sculpture was designed and constructed by Jerry King, an architecture student here at Cal Poly. It is constructed out of plaster with a wood frame needed to support the massive weight of the plaster. He desired a mold so that it could be reproduced in a medium of lighter weight, such as fiberglass. Uniqueness of the mold lies in the center core section. Notice the many recessed or negative draft areas in this section. A one-piece fiberglass mold cannot be pulled out of these areas. Therefore, a three-piece mold is needed, two outer section molds and a specially designed flexible mold for the center section made of a latex burlap composite. The latex is painted on in thin layers to secure an adequate reproduction of the center section. 3 layers are painted on, allowing for 2 hours drying time in between. Burlap strips are then painted on with latex in order to give the mold strength needed to resist tearing when pulling it off the final part. Finally, a thin layer of 4-ounce resin-impregnated cloth was laid over the latex burlap composite to give the rigidity needed to control the shrinkage of the final fiberglass part. This cloth backing is thin enough to break down to facilitate the removal of the core section mold from the final part. 5 coats of wax are then applied to the outer sections to aid in the mold removal from this plug. A tooling gel backed with resin and chopped glass was then sprayed onto the plug. Here, the 3 mold parts have been joined together with bolts, and a particle board web is constructed to provide a mold stand as well as aid in preventing the mold from twisting. 2x4s were also adhered to the perimeter of the mold to give it strength. After waxing the mold, we can now produce a part. The mold is first gel coated. Particular attention is given to hidden areas to ensure adequate coverage with the gel coat. The gel coat is given overnight to cure. After blowing away the debris, we can now apply the chopped glass and resin with this chopper gun. The chopper gun allows us control over the catalyst, resin, solvent, and glass. The operator protects himself from the resin by wearing an organic filter face mask and eye shield. The chopped glass and resin are sprayed onto the edges and corners first. Since the corners give the most strength, care is taken to build them up sufficiently. An even layer of chop is desired over the entire mold. The mold is allowed to cure and a wood frame is constructed inside the fiberglass part to give it added strength. To separate the part from the mold, the edge is sanded down to the mold frame. The bolts can now be removed to free the 3 mold parts. The particle board web is cut in the center to allow the outer mold sections to come apart. These pieces do not need to be rejoined for additional fabrication of parts. The mold is pounded from the outside to aid in the separation of the part from the mold. Particular attention is given to the corners and to the areas where the 3 mold parts have been joined together. One portion of the mold is removed. The corners and surface are accurately produced. The just removed mold section is in the foreground. Time out for reflection. It looks like a successful mold. The lower section has now been removed. A little more effort is required to remove the center core section. Notice the latex mold piece dangling under the elbow in the lower left corner. The center core of the mold is completely removed and a putty knife is used to scrape away the clay which was used to smooth the joint areas between the mold. Except for a small irregular strip left where the molds were joined, the center is a perfect reproduction of the original plaster plug. Since we now have a lightweight part, we can experiment with angles. This is a bit easier than moving the 500-pound plaster plug. A minimum amount of finish sanding is necessary, particularly in the areas where the three mold parts were joined. The mold sections can now be rejoined and waxed to produce another part.